Hey guys, Marsegid here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today we are going to continue on with some of our anniversary speculation videos by talking about the potential leader skills for the LR Broly and the LR Gogeta. Remember, of course, that Broly is going to be the Dokkan Fest exclusive and Gogeta is going to be a Carnival LR. So, of course, their leader skill formats are going to be very different. Broly, we would expect to have, I would say, 2 170 leads and then hopefully 2 plus 30%. Obviously, we could see him getting 3 170s, who knows. A lot of characters that have released during this 200% meta have been given multiple 170s. Some of them had 1 plus 30, some of them have had 2. The anniversary is, I guess, always the kind of time where they could ratchet up some of these things. So him having like 3 170s and maybe even 3 30s is a possibility. But I think a lot of the time they do that mainly for characters who aren't necessarily on a lot of categories themselves, or the categories they are on or are giving as their leader skill are kind of small, so they give them extra ones to bulk out their team a little bit, which is something that I could see happening with Broly potentially with some of the categories that he is on. However, of course, last year's anniversary LRs were 2 170s and 2 plus 30s, so I think that that's probably what we're going to see here with the Broly, and then whoever the Dokkan Fest exclusive is in the part 2 section of the anniversary. So basically all I wanted to do with this is talk about some potential categories that we could see as part of their leader skill. I haven't gone into like full, drawing the comparison like these 2 plus these 2 170s with these 2 30s, and here's the huge the list of all the characters that would be on there. That's something that is of course very interesting to think about, but I'm also want to think about like which categories would be just good for him to have, not only for fitting to the character, but they just have a lot of units on that you can build a team around, because characters don't necessarily need to be on the full 200%. There's a lot of good units in the game now that are perfectly fine on a 170 lead team, and I'd rather we have like more units included in the leader skill as opposed to very specifically picking a combination where certain units get 200% and things like that, right? Because for villains especially, we want to be having these teams that give a nice range of team building so that we can actually get use out of these characters that we've been summoning for, if you are someone like me who does like to summon for the extreme characters. So there's a couple of categories that I kind of want to rule out almost straight away, right? Like Super Saiyans just seems incredibly unlikely as one of the 170 leads for Broly. It would be kind of interesting, I guess, to give him that aspect of being able to build his team with a bunch of the super class characters on it, but that's not ideally what we want, right? And in the same vein, Power Beyond Super Saiyan is obviously a category that skews way more heavily to super types. There are, of course, characters like Rose and stuff like that on there, but we would assume that they are going to be featured under super bosses, which is something I should mention, of course. We know from the fan meetup that they announced the new category super bosses, so seems pretty obvious that that will be one of Broly's 170 leads. So that's the other thing to think about, is are they going to give him, if he's only getting 2 170s in total, is it going to then just be super bosses and one other category? So then what one other category would go well with super bosses in order to make a bunch of, a bunch of really good teams? So one of the things I thought of straight away that would be quite interesting, if you think about this Broly and his leader skill, is if his secondary category was movie bosses, because in terms of giving us as wide a spread of villain characters as we could possibly get, having super bosses and movie bosses means we are essentially getting, that combination of all the big bad guys at the same time. Now, it is weird because Broly is on movie bosses, and in the past they've separated these things, right? Like the physical God Goku is on movie heroes, the in LR God Goku is on superheroes, but they're not both on both. Whereas Broly, of course, is on movie bosses, just like with the Gohan and Piccolo, who are on Battle of Fate, but then also on movie heroes. It seems they've now kind of started to combine those, or at least for these Dragon Ball Super movie characters at the very least. So Broly is going to be on movie bosses and super bosses. So if he led both of those categories, it means we'd be able to have all the super bosses, which we assume will be characters like Merge Zamasu, well, all the Zamasus. I'm assuming all the Goku Blacks would be on there as well. Golden Frieza, but any of the Golden Friezas that count as movie bosses would then come under this heading. Then of course you have your Coolers, Harudagans, Turles, all that kind of stuff. So I think super bosses and movie bosses as a leader skill would be quite good for this Broly, because this gives us a very good combination of all of the different extreme characters to be able to be run on a team together. And even characters like, for example, like this Int Broly, right? He'll get his Easy A at some point, but if this Broly is leading like super bosses and then some other category that this guy's not on, even though he's another Broly, he won't be able to be on his team. So I think movie bosses is definitely a very solid pick. We have these Golden Freezers, units like Janemba, like Tech Janemba when he gets his Easy A, Physical LR Janemba when he gets his. Like some of these guys will be very, very good on an extreme team. So if Broly is leading movie bosses alongside super bosses, I think that could work very, very well. Now, one of the ones that we kind of joked about, because they seem to do this a lot, right? They did it with Physical Turles, they did it with Raditz. They love giving these extreme Saiyans a pure Saiyan leader skill. And it is interesting when it comes to team building, because I've said already, we want to try and be able to build big, expansive, extreme teams. But then at the same time, it is kind of cool to then be able to just throw on Saiyans, who obviously are going to link well with Broly. But then, of course, you run the danger. Well, I suppose it's not a danger, because if you want to run the team that way, you can. But we want him to be a buff for extreme. But if they give him pure Saiyans as one of his 170s, depending on what his 30% is, that obviously then gives the option. You could just build a full team of like Broly and then super class pure Saiyans and just have a Saiyan team with Broly as the leader. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that would be very fun. But like I say, we kind of want him to be more of a buff to extreme. But that could still work out to be very cool, 100%. Especially depending what those plus 30% are. Making a team of largely Saiyans that could still be very powerful would definitely be quite fun. So pure Saiyans, like I say, they've done this a lot with these extreme Saiyan characters, giving them a pure Saiyan leader skill. We definitely don't need another pure Saiyans lead, but you just have to think that that is a possibility in the mix there somewhere. So then, of course, we have Exploding Rage, which I think is an interesting one for Broly. It's a small category, as you can see here. This doesn't have like a ton of characters on it, but we haven't had a new leader for it for quite some time. And Goku with the extra 30s he has and stuff, he's not really a 200% leader for a lot of the characters on this category. And if he is leading Exploding Rage, as we've already said, like there are some of these Super Saiyan characters on here that would work well with him as link partners, as well as some of these like movie bosses, Brolys, that wouldn't be on super bosses. So I think Exploding Rage could be quite an interesting category for him to lead. I don't know if that's an expansive enough team. Maybe this is where we're kind of leading into the territory of what if he had like 3 170s, then Exploding Rage would be a really great option because it is a much smaller category. But Exploding Rage definitely needs a new leader, and it obviously fits with Broly, right, for him to be an Exploding Rage category lead. It also doesn't really work super well as one of the plus 30%, just because the category is so small, right? So it's not really going to be giving the buff. Like if we look at super, even if we just consider super bosses, like if one of his plus 30% was Exploding Rage, we literally have like the couple of Zamasus and Rosés, and then that's it, right? Would be getting his 200% from that combination. So Exploding Rage is one of his plus 30% I think would be quite bad, but as a 170 I think that could be pretty good. Now, one of the ones I did want to point out as well, of course, is the fact that Transformation Boost is a category that this Broly is on. And this is a considerably larger category that features quite a lot of extreme characters. So Transformation Boost as one of his leader skills would be pretty crazy. We recently saw Rosé having that as part of his lead. The most recent one before him was Kale, who obviously is a super type. So I don't think it's necessarily too early for us to be getting another Transformation Boost 170 leader. The only thing I would say in that regard is that when we look at all of the categories that Broly is on, I think Transformation Boost is one of those ones that's perfect for him to have as a plus 30%. Because if we consider I think this is why I would lean towards what I would like it to be. If we lean towards what I said at the beginning with movie bosses and super bosses, and then we look at transformation boost, so many movie bosses and super bosses characters are on transformation boost as well. There would just be a very, very good combination for him to have, right? And a large amount of those characters would just be on his 200% leader skill. Now, of course, as we already mentioned, if we have something like pure Saiyans, there are a bunch of them on here as well. But it's like a much larger extreme weighted category. So if he had movie bosses, super bosses, and then transformation boost, and I'm not even sure what the other 30 would be, that would give a pretty interesting combination of characters. Another one for the plus 30% that I don't think would necessarily be the best 170 would be full power. Now, we've had a few full power characters release, including, of course, the LR Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku. But I guess, to be fair, actually, it is less than I thought, because he's the newest one, and then the most recent one after that was from Heroes 2022. So I guess a new Full Power 170 would be pretty interesting. Unfortunately, again, it's one of those categories where the extreme side is not particularly large. So it could be an interesting plus 30% category for him as well. But yeah, like if he had pure Saiyans as one of his 170s, full power as the plus 30 definitely could work quite well. But yeah, it's a very interesting, when you start trying to combine the 170s and the plus 30s, that's where it gets interesting, right? Because that's where you have to find your crossover of who's going to be getting the 200% leader skill. But I think if I had to pick, just judging by what we've seen so far, movie bosses and super bosses as the two 170s, transformation boost as one of the plus 30s, and then honestly at that point you could go for exploding rage or full power. Probably full power, just because the crossover with, if we look back at exploding rage, the crossover of movie bosses and super bosses is not really there, apart from characters who are kind of already on transformation boost. So yeah, maybe transformation boost and full power potentially. But even then, there's not like a crazy amount of crossover. I guess with the golden freezers, right? Not on super bosses, but he'd be on movie bosses and full power. So golden freezers would be able to be 200% units to be tanks on his team. I think that would be pretty good. So let me know what you guys think down below. Obviously, we know super bosses is going to be involved somehow. I think super bosses and movie bosses as a combo does create one of the wider range of villain teams. So that's definitely the one that I would be hoping to see. I don't think they're going to introduce other new categories. They specifically mentioned the super bosses one, but I guess we will wait and see. So then we finally have, of course, the boy himself, Gogeta. He is going to be a Carnival LR, which means he gets one category with a 200% leader skill. So when we take a look at his categories, there are some that I kind of immediately rule out as being, in my opinion, like too powerful. And whilst we can all say like, oh, you know, we don't care about that, like we want him to have a crazy super powerful team, but they've shown with the Carnival LRs so far that they don't really go for these crazy super powerful teams that would kind of immediately become the best team in the game. And the problem is, if they did do that, they would then have to adjust all upcoming content to be harder to deal with that kind of team, right? And obviously I'm talking about categories like movie heroes. If we got Gogeta be a full 200% movie heroes team lead, so every single movie heroes character just gets 200% from him, I mean, that would probably be the best team in the game, if not one of, right? So very, very powerful. Again, as I say, as players, it'd be like, yeah, awesome, this movie heroes team now is super cracked, like. But again, I don't know if they would go all in on something like movie heroes. Superheroes is also another one, even though it does parallel quite nicely with, you know, the new super bosses category for Broly. Superheroes is already a very, very strong category as well. It's not the biggest one, which does kind of fit in with the categories that they pick for a 200%. But I feel like if you give him superheroes 200%, that becomes like the best team in the game, right? Because whether he's a slot 1 unit or not, you have the blue boys on there that can be a slot 1. AGL UI Goku and STR UI Goku are getting their easy A's as part of the anniversary. Piccolo's still one of the best units in the game. Vegeta and Trunks can still be really, really good in difficult content. Obviously Gohan, Sword of Hope, Trunks. Like some of these combos together on a full 200% team are going to be very, very good, right? And there's a good amount of decent supporting TURs, like the Gammas, some of the Mice for support. Like that team would be really, really good. MVP 17 as well. Now, I mean, it is a small category, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it'll be super hype if BROLY comes out as a super bosses leader, and then Gogeta is a 200% superheroes leader for Carnival. That would be crazy, but I don't expect to see that. And honestly, if it is that, I'll just be pleasantly surprised. But like I say, hopefully they then don't make like the new upcoming content super hard. We don't want another incident of like the red zone, right, where suddenly, you know, 90% of your box is invalidated, and if you're not running Gogeta and the 200% superhero team, then all of the events suddenly become like super hard to beat. But it would be cool, as long as that doesn't happen. But yeah, superheroes and movie heroes I don't think are really on the table. So a couple that I thought would be more realistic is Final Trump Card. Now, we obviously just got a new leader for it last year with the 8th anniversary with these guys, but they're not, you know, it's only one of their 170s. Final Trump Card kind of fits because it has the Gogetas and the Vegetos and stuff on it, right? So makes sense as a category for them, and it is pretty good that it includes the 8-year LRs as well as the 7-year LRs as well. So it's a very strong like super type category with a lot of units on it that can work very well. It is one of the smaller categories again, which I think, like I say, is kind of what they try and go for with these Carnival LRs. So I think Final Trump Card would actually be a really good 200% team with the new LR Gogeta as the leader. I think that probably would end up being a better team than some of these other options, because remember, it is a Gogeta, so something like Fused Fighters would be quite interesting, because the most recent Fused Fighters leader was Zamasu, who's only from the Worldwide Celebration, so not super long ago, but he is an extreme unit. And then, of course, again, we have all the Vegetos and all the Gogetas are on here. Units like Piccolo is still on this team, which would be very good. And then, of course, we have the Zamasus on here. Randomly, like Super 17 is a Fused Fighter, Android 13. Not that you would run them on like a Gogeta team, of course. But yeah, I think this team would be quite strong. All of the fusions, so all the fusions from Heroes, the Dragon Ball Fusions cards, all of those guys would be on this team. I feel like that would make a pretty fun 200% team Fused Fighters, right? Because then the other one is like Time Limit, which is a essentially just smaller version of the Fused Fighters category, right? It has most of the same characters on there. And then we have units like the Butengs, Grandpa Gohan, some of these that are more specific to like the time limit as opposed to the time limit of a fusion. It's the time limit for something else, right? Like the rest of their life expiring or something like that for Grandpa Gohan. But this is a very small category. I think it would be, even with some of the good units that are on here, I think it'd be a bit disappointing if it was something this small. But I mean, I could see it, right? You could still make a team that has the Blue Boys, a bunch of the other fusions, and this team could still be very powerful. But Time Limit is probably the worst of the fusion-based options. Apart from, of course, the category itself, Fusion, which became pretty much, you know, redundant with the release of Fused Fighters. That would be a very disappointing 200% category for him to have, because it then only has the Fusion Dance characters, so no Vegetos, none of the Heroes characters, fusions like Limit Breaker Vegito. So I think that would be a little bit disappointing. So, I mean, if I had to pick myself, like something like Superheroes would obviously be crazy. I think Final Trump Card is one of the better options, but if we're going for one of the fusion-based ones, I do think Fused Fighters would make a very good 200% leader skill for Gogeta as well. So let me know what you guys think down below, because looking at his other categories, right, like Powerful Comeback, we already have Tech Carnival Goku. Transformation Boost, I just think is too big and too varied a category to get a 200% leader skill this early. Super Saiyans, we got the Int Super Saiyans for the Christmas LR. Power Beyond Super Saiyan actually is another one that I should have brought up to talk about with movie heroes and superheroes. Power Beyond Super Saiyan 200%, I think would actually just hands down be the best team in the game. So I think that's way too expansive of a category for them to give a 200% leader. I guess Realm of Gods is something that could be not outside of the realm of possibility, because then we have all the non-fusion God characters that will obviously link very well with Vegito once he's transformed. Like the physical God Goku, it gives another 200% home for some of like the Beeruses and stuff like that if we're going to get a new Beerus or a new Whis at some point in the future. So I could see Realm of Gods potentially, with the UIs getting easy A's during the anniversary. That would actually be pretty cool. and it isn't a huge category overall, so Realm of Gods might actually be a really good choice for him for a 200% leader as well. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. If you had to decide the leader's skills for Broly and for Gogeta, what would they be? Let me know in the comments. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Master Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.